Awesome. So we're
All
live.
right. Great.
Super cool. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now I don't have my Facebook up, so I have it on my phone. I was just going to check to see if we've got anyone on here with us. So welcome everybody if you're here. Hopefully you're here. And if you are watching this in the replay, oh, there we go. It's a few minutes behind. That always screws me up, but yeah, we're good. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So welcome everybody. My name is Jen. I am Jen of Live Life Happy, Jen Merritt, Live Life Happy. And I thought it would be really fun to do this live event with my friend Natalie. Natalie is the president of the Center of Reiki Research, and it's super fascinating. And so I have some questions ready. And if we have other people that join us and they want to also ask some questions, that would be super cool as well. And so, yeah, so I'm excited to be here. And like I said, it'll be recorded. So we're going to share this after the fact if people have questions afterwards.
Great.
So yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. So yeah, a little bit about my background. I'm currently a research scientist, and I study mind-body medicine and integrative medicine. So that's anything from yoga to energy medicine, like Reiki, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
So I got my PhD in neuroscience, behavioral neuroscience, looking at the regulation of anxiety. I suffered from anxiety myself when I was younger, and people usually research what they have personal relevance to. So
Yep, it's true.
And that was a big part of my journey. So as I was getting my PhD, I discovered yoga, meditation, Reiki, which switched my interest from more of like a pharmaceutical approach to regulating anxiety to a natural getting to the root of the problem, self-regulation, cognitive restructuring, and all that wonderful stuff that actually can change the root of the anxiety and depression and other mental health issues. So that totally changed my interest. And when I finished my PhD, I joined a mindfulness lab at Harvard. So we studied basically how the mind can influence the body. So in terms of like sleep perception. So if you think you slept a shorter period of time than you actually did, you would show like sleep deprivation, even though you weren't actually sleep deprived, or like how our perception of time over the body, those kinds of research studies. And also did a nocebo study with the common cold. So people that thought they were getting a cold based on a false saliva sample actually developed symptoms, and so interesting stuff like that. Yeah,
it is really cool. It just proves how amazing our brain is and how kind of easy it is to trick it either way, right?
Yeah, so a lot of mind over body kind of research. And then I joined at Harvard Medical School a yoga lab after that. So then I was studying the effect of Kripalu yoga programs on anxiety, depression, mindfulness itself in high stress populations. So frontline hospital workers, educators. And then as I was working on that, I got, I was like a member of the Center for Reiki Research, which was around 2014. And they sent out an email looking for a scientist to create a survey to conduct Reiki research. So that's how I got involved there. I definitely jumped on that and helped them create a survey for a large scale study.
Wow.
And ever since then, I've been with them. So.
And how long ago was that?
That was 2014.
2014. Okay. Wow. So almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Gone by pretty quick. So I've been, with them for that long, and seen us grown. Like when I first joined, we weren't a nonprofit. Now we're an actual nonprofit organization, so we can have donations and build our organization more. So.
And now, how long has the Center of Reiki Research been around? When was it founded?
Well, it kind of branched off of the International Center for Reiki Training. I think it was just a few years before that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in 2016 is when we got nonprofit status, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're still
Really cool.
relatively new compared to some organizations, but still kind of established enough to to have some grounding and to grow more. So
Yeah. I think it's really super fascinating. That's why I thought it would be so cool to interview you, and selfishly to learn some more information for myself. But I think sharing that knowledge of what you know and the research that you guys are doing, I think would also, benefit all kinds of other people too. Because and you and I have had this discussion in the past that sort of around this kind of area, like Reiki's still fairly new, where other parts of even Canada and other parts of the world, it's it's very common, right?
mhm,
Like,
mhm,
so
mhm.
part of what I'd like to do is just bring more awareness to Reiki, right? So I think
Mhm.
this is a great way to do that.
Yeah,
So
it's definitely on the rise. Like a lot more people, when I first got into Reiki, a lot of people didn't know what it was at all. And now
yeah,
I don't feel like I have to explain it so much. So
yeah.
there's definitely a big shift going on, and a lot of people are practicing it more. And I think it's the population's smaller out here too. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. So so when you started with them, did you already have like a Reiki certification, or did you receive, because I know you also are a practitioner. So
Mhm.
did you receive it after you started studying it, or had you had it before?
No, I had it before. I forgot to kind of weave that in there. I, I got my level 1 in 2010. So before I even
Okay.
started my PhD.
Yeah.
No, I was doing my PhD. Sorry, before I started my postdoc. Um, yeah, I started doing Reiki level 10 in 2010, and then level 2, I think 2011, and then master, I want to say 2016.
Hmm. Okay.
So yeah, it was personal experience with Reiki that made me super interested in wanting to research it. I am a skeptical person, despite what I study.
Hmm.
I am actually a skeptical person, and my baseline is to not just believe something until I see some evidence, whether that's personal experience evidence or like actual scientific evidence. So once
Yeah.
I started practicing it, like I was just called to do it. So it was kind of strange. I just ended up taking Reiki training. And once I saw the effect in my friends and family,
Yeah.
then and feel the energy myself, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this actually is something. And then all this intuition that came from that, and the
Hmm.
interconnection and the
Yeah.
messages, as you know. And it's so interesting. And
It is. I've heard some people sort of explain it kind of like almost like a gateway into all that sort of energy healing, because like you said,
mhm.
your intuition can get turned on or heightened. Like it kind of
Oh yeah.
opens up a lot of doors in a sense, right? Like I
Mhm.
think that's what's super fascinating. And I think a lot of people um maybe fall into it that's kind of same way as well. Like, well, obviously I didn't know what Reiki was years ago or when I was a teenager, but it just sort of evolved into that. And once I started getting into that world, then it's just like, what else can I learn, and what else can I expand on, and what else,
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
and yeah, I think that's sort of a common path for everybody. So I'm just curious, like, how would you describe Reiki if you're explaining Reiki to, um, somebody that's not familiar with it at all? How do you
Mhm.
describe it?
It really depends on who they are.
Hmm.
But I do like to have kind of a balanced approach. And just in general, I would say it's a biofield therapy, first of all, which means that the practitioner is trained in such a way to be able to work with the energy fields and information fields within themselves and within other people to affect a healing response.
Mm.
And they do that through connecting through merging consciousness. So you can think of it as like the quantum field or 0 point, or just infinite awareness. So tapping into that quiet, calm witness within ourselves, kind of letting the ego dissolve, allows us to connect with the other, and then to work with that energy field. So that's basically the way I would describe it. Depends on the person though. Some people I would just say, oh, it's a relaxation technique. And other people you can just go, full on spiritual with it. So depends on the audience, but I think I'd still like to balance it a little bit. And, I'll say, even if they are very materialistic, I'll say, well, this is how we think it works, that we're connecting in this way, but you don't have to believe that for it to work. It's just relaxing.
Right.
And that,
sorry.
I was just going to say that relaxation isn't required for healing. So once you bring in that it evokes the relaxation response, it puts your body into a healing.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. And it's funny, like I know that, but when like hearing you say that, it's just kind of like a little light bulb moment for me, to allow yourself to go into that state.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love that.
Is that your dog?
That is my dog. She's so here. Let me show her off just so that everybody knows where that funny sound is coming from. This is Lois. She likes to join me sometimes, and she's a big sook lately. And as soon as I sit down, she's like on my lap. So she'll stay here for a little bit, and then I'll put her. She has her little bed right here beside me. I know it's funny because I kind of think of it as like there's the people that are like kind of skeptical, so you don't want to be too woo crazy sounding to them, and then there's the ones that really understand that woo, right, and the energy and everything. So lately how I've been sort of explaining it was it's kind of, to me, this is how I explain it as simple as I can, is that I kind of see it as like the wind. So the wind, you don't see it, right? It's like invisible basically, but you feel it and you see the effects. So you see the effects on the trees, and you see, you know what I mean? And you feel the effects, on your body, right? And I feel like Reiki is kind of similar to that. It's like you don't see it, but it is there.
Like the energy itself.
The energy itself is there.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. It's more explaining the energy than.
Yeah. And like you can feel the wind on your skin. You can feel tingly during the session. You can feel warmth or
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I like that.
Okay. And so then you made it to the level as Reiki Master. Did you do your Reiki Master teacher?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah.
In New Hampshire.
Oh, fun. Nice.
All places.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, so you mentioned Harvard. So were you like a student of Harvard, or were you a student up in Canada, but doing research for them?
Yeah, so I did my PhD in Canada in neuroscience, and then I joined as what's called a postdoctoral fellow. Okay. So you're kind of still learning, but you're developing your own research. It's kind of midway between independent researcher and student. So I did 2 fellowships there for 5 years, and then moved back to Canada and I continued a lot of the research just remotely. So still pretty much doing the same thing since. Been here since 2017.
So that would bring me, I guess, to the next question on to like tell us a little bit about the research that the Center of Reiki Research is doing. And because you had mentioned to me before, I think that most of the research is done remotely.
Yeah, all the studies, all the Reiki studies I've done have been remotely, at least in terms of data collection. So the first study we did, we did a study before I joined on, I'll just briefly mention, on knee replacement surgery. So looking at, and that was a standard randomized controlled trial, placebo, sham Reiki group in a hospital setting where patients were undergoing knee transplant. And they were getting a replacement, and they were getting either Reiki, sham Reiki, or what's called usual care. So they just proceed as normal. And my colleague Ann Baldwin was the head of that study, and they showed that the Reiki group compared to the placebo or the usual care group had less pain, increased mobility, and used less pain medication. So that was a study they did before I joined. And then when I joined, we conducted what's called a large scale pragmatic study. So part of what's really important with integrative medicine and what's a priority of the NIH is looking at what's actually happening in the integrative medicine space. So that's called like a pragmatic study. So we recruited Reiki masters in the States, about 100 of them, and we had them give their clients a survey before and after the Reiki session.
Okay.
And that included quantitative measures, so looking at their self-reported pain, anxiety, depression, well-being, fatigue, nausea, various symptoms like that, before and after the session. And then we also asked them to describe their experience during the session. So that's a qualitative assessment. So we published both of those studies separately. The qualitative one just got published this year. The quantitative one was published in 2019. And we ended up with 1,500 Reiki sessions, which was the largest Reiki study to date. So
Wow.
that's one of the strengths of the study. And we showed that Reiki improved all of those symptoms, not only statistically, but what they call like clinically relevant or like large effect sizes. So when you have a large sample and you just have like a little bit of a change, you can get mathematically like, oh yeah, it did something. But when you look at the actual effect size, that's when you can see like, oh, they improved by like 2.5 points, which is really big. So it was clinically and statistically relevant. And so that, that's good. And then we did the qualitative assessment, which was more interesting, I think, in some ways, because then we pull out themes of like what's happening while they're getting Reiki, what are they experiencing? And so we found I think we had 1,200 of those. So not everyone that got the Reiki reported what they experienced. But we got 8 themes out of that by analyzing every one of those reports. And the most common theme is relaxation, like we talked about. So a big chunk of the people wrote that they were very relaxed. And then we had body sensations, which included like tingling or warmth, energetic sensations, so like pulsing or waves of energy, various perception changes, like people see colors, lights, they'll hear different things. Some of them even smell stuff. And then some of the people went on what we called like a journey, or had a visitation. So they went to some other place, like a meadow somewhere, they traveled the galaxy, or they were visited by a loved one who has passed, or an angel, or some kind of being of light. So we reported on all of that, and that was really interesting. And what we're going to do with the data moving forward is look at how does that experience relate to those outcomes. So if you have this like interesting spiritual experience, this journey, what does that do to these different outcomes? Or if you're just feeling relaxed, what does that do? So seeing what predicts the improvement in those symptoms. So I think like a rough preliminary analysis so far has shown that if you experience those sensations and have like the tingling or the warmth, then you get more likely to have improvements in pain, which is interesting. But if you have, and I forgot to mention this theme, it's a really important one, the emotional release. So having an emotional response. So that's like crying or feeling like you're letting go of some like long held emotion. You're more likely to have improvements in anxiety and depression, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So we're working on writing that up. So we haven't published that yet. That's kind of on the edge, leading edge research.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. And so I often say that like every session can be different too. Like even the same person having multiple sessions could have different reactions, like, so would you find that that's true as well? Like that maybe one session you could have an emotional reaction, another one you could maybe have like more of a spiritual experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I know that personally. We don't know that in the research, and we haven't looked at multiple sessions, but that's something that a lot of people ask us. So look at the long term, look how those change over time, multiple sessions. So we haven't done that yet, but that would be really interesting.
That would be really cool because if there was something set up where it's I don't know, say 5 sessions over the same period of time, like either once a week or once a month or something, and see, that would be really interesting. So the other thing I just thought of too is like, these are remote session. So that means the practitioner's not there in the room, right, with these people. So
No, actually, those
No?
were in-person sessions.
They were in person. Okay.
I just collected the data remotely. So
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah, but we have done remote research. I can talk about that as well.
Yeah. So
Like
that,
remote Reiki research.
yeah, that I think would be really cool because how you can have similar experience without the practitioner actually being in the same room,
Mhm.
because energy is not limited to time and space, right?
Mhm.
So what can you share about that?
Yeah, there's
Research in that.
So in general, like overall, there's been about 100 Reiki studies, and it sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot to convince conventional medicine to, although it's getting better. There's a lot of Reiki programs in hospitals. But when it comes to distance Reiki, there's only been, I want to say, like 6 studies. So it definitely hasn't been studied as much.
Yeah.
And so one study that we ran recently, and we presented it, we haven't published it quite yet, but we're getting really close, is providing distance Reiki for frontline professionals. It's a program in the UK. So any frontline healthcare worker can sign up to get free Reiki. It started with the COVID pandemic to help reduce their stress. So for that, we also looked at before and after. So they got 4 sessions actually in this study compared to the other one, which was just 1 Reiki. So they got 4 consecutive 20-minute sessions at a certain time every day. And we looked at their anxiety, depression, overall well-being, pain, and sleep quality. So like the first study, we did see improvements in all of those measures that were of medium to high effect sizes. So a good effect, a few points of improvement. There are some distance studies that don't show. So that one wasn't placebo controlled. If you placebo control, sometimes it can wash out some of those results. So there is an effect of like thinking you're getting healed, or like having this idea like someone's looking after me, someone's taking care of me. So what we usually find is that the sham Reiki or the placebo Reiki is somewhere in between the actual Reiki and nothing happening.
Oh, okay.
Because there is this effect of expectation of like letting go, and like you're putting yourself in, okay, I'm relaxing now, I'm receiving. So all of those do have some benefits, but not as much as actual Reiki.
Right. Yeah.
So we do see some studies like that where the sham group, they still improve a little bit, but not as much as the Reiki group. So we need to like parse out what all of those components are. Is it expectation? Is it, what aspect of that is really benefiting them? And there is that, as you know, as a Reiki practitioner, it's not just like you giving Reiki, it's a participation. So there's a receiving and there's a communication going on. So the client participates in it. So them, opening to being healed and opening to receive actually does have some kind of an impact as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, in general, we do see the same, at least overall, improvements in distance versus in person, but there hasn't been enough to really conclusively say like it's the same thing. And there needs to be research looking at in person versus distance to see what those differences are.
Super fascinating. Huh. It really is. Like it just kind of blows my mind, like how, well, so admittedly, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know how to conduct a study, but what I love about listening to it is like how in depth it is, like every sort of angle you guys are looking at, and, to come up with the analysis, right? Like analyzing it from all the angles. And I think that's really awesome.
There's a balance there. You want to control as much as you can, but you also want to keep it as natural.
Yeah.
Because like
of course.
some protocols are like, okay, put your hands here for 2 minutes, then there for 2 minutes, then there. And some protocols are like, here's a guide, but because you know how it is as a Reiki practitioner, your hands will go different places. It's not, a standardized session every time. Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of like, okay, we need to allow the practitioners to also flow with where they feel the patient or the participant needs the energy, to also being able to say like, each session was somewhat similar so that we can standardize. So there's always that balance that we're trying to walk with these kinds of studies.
Super cool. So do you have any new research studies that are coming up that you're really excited about?
Yeah, there are a few going on actually. Don't know if I can talk. I can talk about one of them. I don't know if I can talk about the other because there's other lead researchers and I don't want to talk about it because I don't have that permission necessarily. But one is a hospital-based study in Ohio. So for whatever reason, Ohio is like got a lot of Reiki going on. They're very into integrative medicine.
Cool.
And I work for a hospital system in Ohio. So we're going to be looking at Reiki for cancer patients, which is good, looking at their pain, anxiety, all those kind of quality of life measures that I've mentioned already, depression, fatigue, nausea. So when they're going in for infusions during chemotherapy, they'll have a Reiki practitioner with them. And that will be a controlled trial. So we'll compare with patients that are not getting Reiki. So that should be, I mean, we're just collecting data now, so it'll be published probably in a couple of years, but that's something that we're working on. And then another one in the works is another distance Reiki study, which through the Center for Reiki Research, and that's looking at distance Reiki for chronic pain. We already know from a lot of research that Reiki does affect pain. It's one of the things that is like a guarantee improvement at this point. Pain, anxiety, and depression are very benefited by Reiki. So we're looking at that, and it's going to be placebo controlled. So people will be being told they're getting Reiki at a certain time, and they lay down and get Reiki. Then another group will be told they're getting Reiki at a certain time, but they're not actually getting it. And then we'll have another group where nothing happens. So just like a passive control. So it will be placebo controlled, which the journals, scientific journals really like. But what we're going to look at, which is interesting to me, is what is the mediating factor of like the effectiveness of that. So kind of like we were talking about before, like the different themes and how they relate to the outcomes. But for this, we're looking at like the qualities in the practitioner themselves. So as a practitioner, maybe you understand that like the more mindful you are, or the more focused you are, or the more present you are, the more powerful the session is, or the more compassionate and loving you are, the more powerful the session is. So we're going to look at those characteristics in the practitioner and how they felt. So overall, like how mindful and loving they are in general, but also like by session. So you can change from day to day.
How would you be able to monitor that?
So we'd have to have the practitioners take what are called like trait and state measures. So they would take a trait measure of their compassionate love. It's funny to like measure these kinds of things, but there are questions that and validated scales that like measure how compassionate you are, and how empathic you are. So how much empathy you feel, or how mindful you are, how in the present moment you are. And these are like subject to what's called social desirability bias. So people can just say like, oh, I'm super compassionate. But there's ways of like other scales that you can use to test that they're kind of like over amplifying these skills. So there's ways for even controlling for that. And then each session we'll do a state measure. So how focused were you during that session? How mindful were you during that session? So we'll have to look at both. So their overall traits and then their states. And then doing a bunch of statistical math, we use these predictor variables, or use these as predictor variables for the change in the client or the patient in pain, anxiety, and depression. So you're like correlating those two, and then you should be able to see statistically, like if they're more compassionate, their anxiety improves more, or if they're more mindful, their pain improves more, or maybe it's a mix of all of that. So looking at like what is the ingredient for having a more potent Reiki session, essentially. Because when you talk to a lot of practitioners, and I feel this way too, a lot of it is dependent on those variables, like how present are you? How loving are you? How much compassion are you feeling? Those I think are really, really key, because if you're thinking about what you're going to make for dinner, or like, and you're just kind of putting your hands, it's not going to be as effective.
And I find for myself personally, it's I spend a good amount of time sort of getting into a good headspace before I do put my hands on a person. I think
Mhm.
that's really important.
Yeah, and that's another thing you could test too, is having practitioners meditate, a certain period of time before, or
Yeah,
have them distracted watching something, or
TV or something, or watching
exactly.
TikTok and then do a session.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
then
such a
see how
new
well they
field.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many questions that we can ask, and so many studies that can be done. So
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So, do you have, say, a number in mind that if you were like, is there, because I know that you have clients and stuff. So, is there a number that you kind of advise your clients, like that there's, or that you would suggest, like 5 sessions is a great start, or do you sort of go like session to session?
yeah, it really depends. Like it depends what they're there for.
Okay.
So if I have a client that has a chronic condition,
Hmm.
and it depends what they're comfortable with too. Like
Yeah.
sometimes they're really sensitive and one session is like, okay, they can't have it for another week. The most I've ever done is 2 a week with someone
Okay.
with a chronic health condition. But I'm always cautious to like tell them to come back, or I always leave it like really open, because I don't want to seem like I'm soliciting or anything like
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
And some people it's a spiritual, they just want some kind of interesting experience, so
Hmm.
they'll get almost like a reading out of it, and then it's like a one-off and they don't need to return. But for chronic conditions, probably at least once a week is advisable.
Okay.
In a lot of the research, they'll do like 5 sessions in a row, but those can be like hospitalized patients, for example. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it really depends.
Cool.
um, yeah.
Okay. Let me see. Thank you, because I have here my list of questions. I think you've covered pretty much everything. um, so how would you, how has Reiki changed your life?
Mm.
Or how has it impacted your life?
I think it's completely changed my life, but it is hard to disentangle that from like the other practices I've done, like the
Mhm.
meditation and the yoga, and because I kind of discovered all that, I think it was 2008 that I really it all just happened at once. So it's hard to like disentangle. Um, but yeah, it's absolutely changed my life. It's changed my research career. So career-wise, it's changed everything.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also changed my spirituality. It's changed my level of intuition. That was something that I never expected, that Reiki would lead to, like
Mhm.
even like mediumship abilities, essentially, like just incredibly beneficial things for clients and for myself, and to really I guess the most important thing that it's changed is just reinforcing my belief in like consciousness surviving death, essentially. So that's something at a young age I wanted evidence for a lot. So I would read a lot of near-death experiences, and just looking for that evidence of, does consciousness survive death, and how much that can reduce suffering.
Mm.
And Reiki really just the intuition and the effects of it, the interconnection, provided me with a lot of firsthand knowledge of that, and then all the other Reiki people that are tapped into that as well. And
Yeah.
I think that like it's really like reinforced my belief, and in that case like greatly reduced my suffering,
Mhm.
because I had anxiety and depression from like a young age,
Mhm.
and being able to transcend that suffering
Mhm.
through truth is really invaluable. So it's been absolutely incredible transformation.
I wonder if because I would also say that I definitely experienced anxiety from a young age as well. And I wonder if there's if if that's even sort of a common thing, that, suffering from anxiety and um leading you into becoming like a Reiki practitioner, because then it also it helps reduce your anxiety. So then you want to share it with other
Mhm.
people and help reduce theirs, right? I
Mhm.
wonder if there's some sort of common theme there too.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the whole like the wounded healer kind of thing. I mean, and I mean, there's so many different ways to look at it. Like there's the path of like, I'm suffering from anxiety, so what can I do to feel better? And then, oh, wow, this worked. And so I'm going to share it with other people.
Yeah.
And there's the whole suffering is the path to enlightenment approach, where you
Mhm.
start questioning reality and start learning more about the deeper truths, and that pulls you into these spheres of
Yeah.
healing. And so there's a lot of different ways that it can lead to that.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people with anxiety are sensitives, and they pick up more information, or a lot of it's not even their own energies. So then there's that avenue as well, where
Yeah.
they're naturally more intuitive, whether
Yeah.
it's from trauma, like trauma can make us more intuitive, or
Yeah.
just like a sensitive person, like without
Yeah.
trauma. So yeah, I mean, it's the same with psychologists and therapists. A lot of them had issues themselves, and
Mhm.
through working with their own issues, and it makes you more compassionate because you've
You've
reached a
experienced
certain
it in
level of
some way. Yeah.
suffering. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as soon as you've healed yourself in some way, or found some techniques to heal yourself, that compassion drives you to share it with other
Yeah.
people. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. That's that when I started with Reiki, I had actually gone to a friend of mine who is a channeler, and I don't know how the conversation came about, but she was like, um, you would do well with Reiki. You should like take my course. I'm like, sure.
Mm.
Like I didn't really, right? Because I had always kind of been interested in like alternative medicines and stuff like that, or alternative healings, and but I never really had a session. I was just like,
Mhm.
sure. Like I kind of heard about it and like, let's give it a try. So the first, like level one um, was like a big, I guess like a big step. It was definitely the first step into like opening my eyes onto, the whole realm of healing. And then level two, I was definitely felt that need that I really wanted to share this with people. Like it was beyond just wanting to share it for myself, like just my own self practice. Like I really wanted other people to experience this, right?
Mhm.
Because I find
Mhm.
that's one thing for me is like if I experience something, it's like I want everybody to experience it. Like I want to share it with
Mhm.
you. I want to share,
Yeah.
share, share.
Mhm.
And then last year, I think it was, I had to have my appendix taken out. And so, and it was fine. Like it wasn't, I think luckily, like I'm pretty in tune with what my body feels like. So I actually caught it, like it didn't even burst. It was just inflamed. So at first they weren't even really sure if it was my appendix because there was no signs that it had burst. And anyway, so that was fine. I had the surgery. And then the next day I was, I guess just sort of reflecting because even during COVID, like it was fine. Like I wasn't really able to have visitors, but everybody in the hospital was so nice, and I felt really well taken care of, and I was just feeling really grateful. But then I had this next thought that if I had taught like my kids how to do Reiki or my husband, because I was having trouble doing it to myself
Mhm.
because my
Mhm.
anxiety was higher. It was a burning kind of pain, and I was having a hard time relaxing myself into that state of where I wanted to be. And but I thought if I had have, taught them how to do it, because I could, you know what I mean, just give them some
Mhm.
tips or whatever.
Mhm.
And so that was a light bulb moment for me of really wanting um to share it, like the education of it with people and become the Reiki master teacher so that I can actually teach people how to do it, whether they want to be a practitioner or to share it with their families, like on whatever level.
Mhm.
But um, but yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but
But just like sharing it, yeah,
yeah,
once you feel the benefit. And then yeah, it's tough, like they say to practice self Reiki a lot, but sometimes it's hard. Like
yeah.
you really do need to be able to let go and allow someone else to heal you
Sometimes I think
sometimes.
you do. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost
definitely.
too much of I don't know, almost like a too close to home sometimes to do it to
Mhm,
yourself, right? Because
mhm,
you're
mhm.
feeling this other emotion, so it's hard to take this emotion
Yeah,
into this one when it's depending on the
yeah, and
intensity.
like we talked about earlier, like you got to get into that space of like to be able to do it effectively to begin with, you have to be calm and you got to be focused.
Yeah,
And when you're not, it's a lot
yeah.
harder to get into that. It's possible, but sometimes we just need to like let go and receive and
Hmm.
not be thinking at all. Cause sometimes you're thinking too, like, oh, put this here and go here. And
Hmm. Hmm.
um, rather than just receiving and laying on a
Yeah,
bed and
yeah.
there's that caretaking component and social support and there's so much to that. So yeah, I think um, having to put the responsibility on yourself to do self Reiki is a little bit much. Like we need other people as well.
Yes, yes. That's a good point. Sometimes um I still try to kind of manage it all like myself, you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
don't always like ask for help. So
Mhm.
that could be why, is like not even considering that I could even teach it to them and that
Mhm.
they could help me,
Mhm.
like it didn't even cross my mind. Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when I thought of it, I'm like, how beautiful of a thing would that be for families to, if someone's not feeling well and just, place their
Mhm.
hands on them and have, you know, an impromptu session.
Yeah, I think that's a common, any kind of healer or caretaker, it's a common issue. Like you're so used to giving that it's like, oh, I don't need anyone, I don't need any help.
Hmm.
And for myself too, I never received a Reiki session until years after doing Reiki, which is not, it's not good. Like I should have received Reiki,
Yeah.
but it was really the death of my mother and the stress around her illness. And I needed help. I couldn't do it myself.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I'm like, I need to go to someone
Yeah.
because I can't do this myself. And
Yeah.
so sometimes we're like forced to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that really helped me a lot. You were one of the people I went to when I moved out here, and
Yeah.
it's very beneficial. So I think
Yeah. It was super cool.
there's so much self-care, self-care, self-care. And
Well,
um,
and it's funny that you say that because it actually really resonates with things that have been on my mind right now because when you learn different tools and you learn different modalities, there's kind of like I don't think I really consciously thought this, but I think subconsciously I'm like, I should be able to do this myself. But when you're
mhm,
like you just said, if you're not in the right state of mind, then you can't really do it yourself, right? So you
yeah,
got,
yeah,
asking for assistance to bring you down a little bit into,
mhm,
that calmer meditative state is yeah, yeah.
yeah. And
I'm
it's
glad that we
okay. I mean,
mentioned that.
yeah, and it's not a fault, it's not a weakness.
Exactly.
We're all parts of one whole anyway. And it's like, it's really like a part of yourself helping yourself when
Right.
one
And
part is needing it.
there's
So
nothing wrong, it's actually healthy for the healer to be healed,
mhm,
to the healer to receive healing, right? Like
mhm,
it's a natural process. I
yeah.
think that there's and this is kind of a whole other conversation, but um maybe it's a self-imposed sort of expectation that when you enter the world as like you do healing or whatever, that you should be this perfect person, right?
Mhm,
I wouldn't say no one puts that expectation on me except for
right.
myself, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm,
it's, there's nothing, like you said, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. It should actually be
yeah.
encouraged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the worst things is to have like that ego block where you can't heal, because if you don't do that, then you're not going to be that pure channel
Hmm.
that you want to be.
Yeah.
Like for myself, I had wounds, from things that happened to me in the last few years,
Yeah.
and I needed to clear them out, and I couldn't do it myself. I really couldn't. I mean, not in the period of time that I would like to. I mean, how
Right.
could have taken a lot longer, could have been a lot more
Yeah.
difficult.
Because when
And
it's yourself, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I know I kind of procrastinate a little bit, like I
mhm,
know sometimes there's things that I should be like looking at and it's just like, not right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to bring up those emotions right now.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And being vulnerable and yeah. And yeah, just easing up on like, yeah, you don't have to be perfect. No one is.
No, it's true. Yeah.
And it's
There's
all a
not
journey.
one single
And
human in this world that is perfect. So
right. And
yeah.
self-compassion is a big
Mhm,
part of compassion. If you're not self-compassionate, then
mhm.
you're missing a big part of the piece. And
Yeah.
so
Super cool. So how would people be able to get a hold of you or the Center of Reiki Research if they had any
mhm.
questions?
So Reiki Research, sorry, .org,
Mhm,
reikiresearch.org is the Center for Reiki Research website, or Center for Reiki Research.org, but
mhm.
reikiresearch.org is easier to remember. And you can find a lot of information on there. My website's drnataliedyer.com. You can contact me through there or email me directly, which is natalieleidyer@gmail.com, which might not be as easy. NATALIELIEDYER
Yeah.
Also on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and all those things. Yeah, so you can just Google me.
Awesome. So is there anything else that you would like to share that maybe we haven't covered or I haven't asked or
I guess like if people are more interested in the Reiki research, we do have a conference coming up in April through the Center for Reiki Research called the Reiki Research Conference, and it's the first Reiki Research conference ever. So it's
wow.
we're really excited about that. So researchers can present if they have any research, or people can just attend, and it's over 2 days in April. And we'll be discussing all of the latest research and having a Reiki share and also like a social and networking and lots of presentations. And so it's
Is
gonna
it
be
just in person or in person
no,
and online?
it'll be virtual. It's not in
All
person
virtual.
yet.
Okay.
It's completely virtual. The subsequent conferences we'd like to do in person, but we figured like at the time when we started planning, things were still like travel was still very restricted. And we thought we'll just do it online for now. So you can join from anywhere.
Yeah. Love
So I
that.
think, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's an exciting venture that we're doing. I don't think I have anything else to share really.
Okay. I saw that there was I got a uh-oh. Hold on. I got a notification that there was a question. So just give me one sec here. If I can find it. Here we go. It's all good. It's all good.
Like on Facebook?
Yes. I'm just
Yeah,
bringing it up
maybe I can
here.
find
Where
it.
did it go? One comment. Might not have been a question. Oh, Heather said, love Natalie.
Oh, yeah,
That's
that's
nice.
my friend Heather. Thanks, Heather. She's the best.
Okay, so I thought that I saw one come up from someone named Steven. I'm going to check the meeting chat. Well, I'm not seeing it, and it's not here in the Zoom chat either, so
Okay.
that's okay.
Well, I can, if you know, you can send it to me and I'll
Yeah,
respond
yeah,
later.
I'll check it out. It might be a little bit easier when we're not on live.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I can't remember Steven's last name, but there was a comment from a Steven. So I'll check it out after. And if we're not able to answer it right now, that's super cool. We'll answer it after the fact if it's a question.
Mhm. Yep.
So yeah, so thank you so much.
Thanks,
This
Jen. Thanks
was,
for having me. I
yeah,
love
this was
talking
so
about this
fun.
stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
Definitely.
I do too. And like I said, I find it really fascinating to listen to all of like the research and how it's conducted, I think is fascinating. So
Yeah, and I should mention research is really on the rise. Like this last year, At the Center for Reiki Research, we summarize every study that comes out. We analyze it, critique
Mhm.
it. And in 2022, we can barely keep up. Like it's just exploded.
So who else is conducting research? Like what other, I don't know, associations or organizations?
There's no other like Reiki organization per se that's conducting research, but different groups throughout. There's a group in Turkey, there's a group in Brazil, there's a group in missing another country. There's groups all over the world. I just did a webinar with Susan Thrain. She's in Ohio. She's done quite a few Reiki studies. So there's people all over the world kind of doing this research, and especially like the Turkey group, they're really on the rise. Like they're publishing quite a lot. So, and in English, which is good because sometimes like you can publish in a different language and we won't be able to translate it and be aware of it. So there's been a really big boom this year. Not sure why, but it's really good because that just gets reflected in the hospital system. So we're seeing parallel increase in the interest in the hospitals as well. So
I think that's
good.
fascinating because that is something I would love to see, is have Reiki just sort of, you know, just as well known as like massage therapy. Right.
Yeah.
And I know, you know, some people have it covered in their, I don't know, their not Medicare, but like their Blue Cross or coverage or something like that. But it's not recognized in all of them, you know. So I think it would open up doors just for people receiving Reiki, you know, feeling more comfortable having some coverage to help, you know, and then and also helping out the practitioners, right? That if there's people that are feeling held back financially of reaching out to having a session. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that's why, it's really popular in the hospital because it's free service a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So patients can get as many sessions as they want, essentially, when they're an inpatient. And so a lot of this is opening up, and a lot of programs are being initiated in hospitals, especially in the US. I'm not sure so much about Canada, but again, our population is not as big, and we don't have as many universities and hospitals, but we tend to kind of follow eventually what they do anyway. So
yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, I think that's all my questions. I think this was really informative. So thank you so much. It's really nice to have like that scientific background to it.
Yeah, because there is evidence, strong evidence, consistent evidence, and I think it helps to
I did think of one other. So the other studies, like in Turkey and I think you said Brazil and places like that, is their research similar to the studies that you've done as well? Like the results?
Yeah, I mean, it's all over the place. Some of them are really great. Some of them are, the problem with Reiki research is sometimes the people, they're not as high quality, whether it's the study itself or the writing. And that can also be like a translation issue. So a few of them are not super strong studies, but some of them really are. And so some are in healthcare, some are distance Reiki, some are just with employees at like a software agency, or so it's kind of all over the place. And if people are interested, like reikiresearch.org, we have a list of every study that's been published and we summarize it. And it's like a membership-based program. If you're just a basic member, you can at least see the list of all the studies and click on the abstracts and see the summaries. So we update that every month. So.
And how much is a basic membership?
Basic membership's free. Yeah, and that'll allow you to see all of the studies. And then we have associate membership, which I believe is $119, and that gives you more access and free webinars. And then we have professional membership, which is I think $249, and you get more. So you can see online on our website what each of those, and you get discounts with the conference as well. And free webinars. So.
And now, could anybody have a basic membership?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you again.
All right. Thanks, Jen. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's
Good
good
talk.
to see you too. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So
All right.
I'm going to sign us off,
Okay.
and let me see here. I think I will stop live stream first, and then I'll stop the recording. All right.
Okay.
So again, thank you so much. This was
Thank you.
really, really awesome to hear all this. And I
Thanks,
hope
Jen.
everyone else enjoyed. If I find any questions afterwards, we will follow up, or any comments, we'll follow up after. Okay, bye.